Welcome to Talking Tactics. Since Russia launched its brutal full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, Ukraine has received a lot of help from its allies. More than $90 billion, for example, from various institutions of the European Union. Germany has sent over $18 billion worth of military aid, but also countries like Great Britain, the Netherlands, and let's not forget smaller states like the Czech Republic, Lithuania and Estonia contributed great amounts to assure the country's survival. But when it comes to military aid alone, the USA leads the list with over $44 billion. It remains without a doubt, without the help of the United States of America, the situation in Ukraine would be very different today. It would take quite a long time to list everything the USA has provided over the past 1.5 years. If you want to get a complete overview, you can just check out the website of the Department of Defense. But since 2023 is slowly coming to an end, and since support for Ukraine, in light of the political tug-of-war happening in US Congress, has been a critical point of discussion, we want to give an overview of the most important weapons that the USA has supplied, what they mean for the country, and then talk about what could happen if this supply of weapons ceases. In terms of air defense, the American contributions included 1 Patriot air defense battery, 12 NASAMS air defense systems, Hawks, more than 2,000 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, Avenger air defense systems, 21 air surveillance radars. All these systems have been crucial to keeping Ukrainian skies and millions of people relatively safe. Russia still manages to conduct successful air raids and attacks, but without these systems, Ukraine would literally be sitting in the dark right now. The amount of casualties would be unthinkably high. Moving on to artillery, where the USA has provided 39 HIMARS and ammunition, including finally the ATACMS. With these mobile systems, Ukraine has been able to hit countless targets behind Russian lines. For example, on New Year's Day 2022. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, 63 service members died in an attack on a building housing Russian soldiers in the region of Donetsk. Another example is the strike on Antonivsky Bridge, which connects the city of Kherson to the left riverbank in summer of 2022. At that point, the city was still under Russian occupation. The bridge was one of the key supply lines. The USA has also supplied 198 155mm howitzers and more than 2 million 155mm rounds, plus more than 7,000 precision-guided 155mm artillery shells, 72 105mm howitzers, and more than 800,000 105mm shells. Also, over 400,000 mortar rounds and much more. At this point, it's important to stress that this is an artillery war, meaning these systems are not only vital to suppress the enemy, either as preparation for starting an attack or to defend from one, but because of that, the use of ammunition is incredibly high. According to The Economist, Ukraine was firing well over 200,000 large-caliber shells, so 152 and 155mm per month during the summer. The rate of fire in winter falls down usually to around 80 to 90,000 shells a month. Now, although countries in the EU and the USA have vowed to increase their production, right now the monthly production rate lies around 25,000 and 28,000 respectively. Ammunition is always scarce. Moving on to tanks and armored vehicles, the US has supplied 31 Abrams main battle tanks, 186 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, 189 Stryker APCs, 300 M113 APCs, and thousands of other armored vehicles for different functions, as well as trucks, trailers, tactical vehicles to tow and haul equipment, fuel tankers. Without all of this, Ukraine's ground maneuver capabilities would be drastically reduced. And okay, 31 Abrams are definitely not enough to recapture Crimea, but it's a start. The same goes for aircraft and unmanned aerial systems. While everyone is waiting for F-16s, things like the 20 Mi-17 helicopters and the more than 20,000 Hydra 70 rockets, the Switchblade unmanned aerial systems, high-speed anti-radiation missiles or HIMARS have already helped a lot. But not just big equipment has found its way over the pond. Sometimes it's the small stuff that makes the difference, such as the more than 100,000 anti-armor systems and munitions, including 10,000 javelins, more than 8,000 tube-launched, optically tracked wire-guided missiles or TOW, over 35,000 grenade launchers and small arms, and over 400 million rounds of small arms ammunition and grenades. This is some of the stuff that saved the capital Kyiv when Russia sent columns after columns over the border from Russia. There is a lot missing from this list, as said before, and probably some stuff that isn't even publicly available. And while even Ukraine's long-term goal is to reduce its dependency on foreign aid, the country already is doing everything it can to make sure the foundation for that is laid down right now, for example through the development of own technology and weapons, or the opening of new factories in cooperation with German defense giant Rheinmetall. In December, President Zelensky met with Joe Biden, the US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Brown, as well as representatives of US defense companies, including Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and General Dynamics, to discuss future cooperations. But still, in the United States, there seems to be a political tug-of-war game going on, which, of course, is nothing unusual in a democracy, but in this case it concerns a supplemental budget requested by Joe Biden of $106 billion. $61 billion is for Ukraine and the rest for Israel and other national security priorities. If it passes remains to be seen. According to The Economist, many Republicans are tying aid for Ukraine to tougher measures to curb migration, for example, across America's border with Mexico. Of course, it's hard to judge US politics from here. And of course, there are other security issues for the USA than Ukraine. But for one, the money the USA allocates to Ukraine is not lost. In fact, according to multiple findings, over 90% of the money actually stays in the country, as it's being used to build new weapons or to replace weapons sent to Ukraine. So it's quite ironic, considering the fact, and this is quoted from the Washington Post, that 31 senators and House members whose states or districts benefit from funding for Ukraine have voted to oppose or restrict that aid. They include some of the most prominent anti-Ukraine voices in Congress. So let's summarize. The investment of military aid to Ukraine is not as altruistic as it seems. At least from an economic standpoint, it's quite profitable for the American economy. In addition, and this has been repeated many times before, but apparently not enough, this is a fight for the existence of a country and its people. If Russia has the chance, it will destroy Ukraine, period. With that said, sending military aid to Ukraine sounds like a win-win, except for the Russians, of course, but they started this war, and that must never be forgotten. Thanks for watching Talking Tactics. Hit like and subscribe and see you next week. Also be sure to follow our channel on Telegram to always stay up to date with the latest news from Ukraine.